Well, Jason, it's great to get back together again.
Absolutely. Welcome back from your trip.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear the continuing part of the story because I've been telling people of all the people that I know, you are the most interesting man in the world. So I am ready to go on. So where did we last leave off?
Yeah, this is actually one of the most interesting parts, actually. Probably the most pivotal moment. We left off where I had just traveled to, Middle East, South America, went on this crazy trip, seeking out Japan, seeking out the master, like the Yoda that I've been seeking, and couldn't find anyone. Came back to America, started studying Ayurveda and yoga, and just more and more, it's just fueling my desire to find the teacher who's going to teach me to meditate and understand reality and find bliss. Um, and I remember being in my kitchen. My parents were divorcing, my mom's selling the house, and I'm just sitting there reading all these yoga books, stacks of yoga books, and thinking to myself, like, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm too old. I'm 25. I don't want to go into the corporate world. I have no interest in that. I have money saved, but I traveled and didn't find what I was looking for. It's all over for me. So maybe if I die, I'll reincarnate and I'll have another chance at this.
Wow.
Those were literally my thoughts. Just
So you're in your kitchen, stack of yoga books, and you're saying this is it. So what happened next?
so that. I went to sleep that night. Woke up the next day with my stack of yoga books, reading it, just wishing I could find my teacher. And then a friend of mine said to me, "Hey, I want to take you out. I want to introduce you to some people tonight." And at this point, again, I'm depressed. I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with any of this. Like, I had no interest in what most people were into. Just wanted to study. I wanted to be in ancient India. And he's like, no, no, come on. These guys are cool. I think you'll like them. And I was like, okay. Something said, sure, I'll go. So he picks me up. We go to this house, and there was these two guys playing Scrabble, and one guy was more talkative in the beginning, and we're talking about herbs, and I was like, oh, this is actually really cool conversation because I'm getting into Ayurveda and herbs, and then the other guy was chiming in a lot about the yoga parts and as well as the herbs. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, who is this guy who knows all this stuff about yoga? So we're just talking and meditation. Before you know it, like hours going by, we're outside, and this guy, this skinny guy, Jim, his name is, keeps talking about all these things I'm interested in. And finally, I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I teach yoga, I teach meditation, like to Tibetan Buddhist monks. And I said, wait, you teach them the meditation? He's like, yeah. I'm like, how did you get into that? He's like, oh, I've been doing it since I'm 5 years old. And then I said, like, are you accepting students? He says, as a matter of fact, I am, kind of thing. So I said, let me get your number. And sure enough, um, I called him, and he kept saying, yes, yes, we'll do this. And typical teacher fashion, after about three calls, he said, yes, come over and we can begin. So I meet him at the same house, the guy John's house, where I met him originally. And he told me then, he's like, I'm going to be teaching you, if you want, the deeper practices, the teachings I've been waiting to teach people, like teach the serious students. Like, he could tell early on, like, that I was serious about this. So that's how it began. And we started meeting in these forests, this woods. This is in Staten Island, so we have a lot of parks. There's a lot of nature preserved, but this was in a swampy type area, and he had been meditating there since he was a little kid. He was like 45 at the time, so he'd been meditating there for his whole life. And so I met there. I barely knew him, and he set out a tarp on the ground. And again, I said I didn't want to do yoga in a yoga studio. Now I'm in the forest doing yoga, which is like the traditional setting. So I'm like, right away, this is pretty cool. And I'm getting to know about him. And yeah, so we he would show me some yoga, like stretching and breathing and meditation. And in the beginning, I'll tell you this cool story. There was a lot of mosquitoes. This is the summer. This is in June 2004. There's a lot of mosquitoes. It's really hot. And he said, if we meditate here 3 times, after the third time we practice here, the mosquitoes will stop coming. So then, sure enough, not only did the mosquitoes stop coming, it was a hot summer. And we would stay in this place twice a week, 3 to 6 hours sometimes. The time would go by and it was cool. It would stay very cool the whole time.
Wow. So the day after you say it's too late,
Uh-huh.
you end
Yeah.
up meeting a yoga master. So give me some background on Jim. Tell me some things about you. How did Jim get to this position?
Well, here's the funniest part of the whole story. Like in a typical fashion, like you read about all these like hero's journey mythology stories, like Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan was in his neighborhood his whole life. He just didn't know he was a Jedi master. Same thing with Jim. He literally was 10 minutes from where I grew up my whole life. We were like basically in the same neighborhood. And he had told me later on that he had seen me before and knew in the future I would be one of his closest disciples.
Wow. So how did he get started in yoga?
So yeah, he started when he was 5 years old. He found a yoga program on PBS, and he just got up every morning and started doing it at 5 years old, 5 to 8 years old, every day doing yoga. His parents didn't even know he was really doing it. And if you even go before his 5 years old, his story would seem like miraculous to most people, but in the world that I'm in with yogis and stuff, it's not so out of the norm. But yeah, he claims to remember everything from the moment he's born. Basically, he has memories of everything, and then the yoga at 5 to 8, and meditation. And the interesting thing is, you talk about, age 10, right, is when kids are in flow state. And then age 10, they get conditioned from other kids. One thing very unique about Jim is because of his meditation from age 5 or even before that, he was aware of that conditioning. He watched it happen to all the kids around him. And he
Wow.
consciously did not ever succumb to it. So he's watching all the kids get like brainwashed, and he's like, oh, I guess I got to deal with this now. I'll be like the one kid who's not brainwashed. And he's been like teaching, like since he's like 8 years old, he's been teaching meditation to like his like one or two of his classmates. He'll kind of teach them. So he's been teaching it since he's a little kid.
Okay. So then when did he start teaching adults?
Well, yeah, funny thing is so he told me a story so he's born in 59. So when he was like 12 years old, like around that time, it was like the hippies. It was like the hippie time. So he would just go into the park and meditate. There's a park near his house, and these older hippies saw him, 18-year-olds, and they were like, who's like, the hippies are getting into meditation, all this Eastern stuff. They're like, who's this little kid like meditating? So they start talking to him, and before you know it, he's teaching them yoga and meditation.
Wow.
And he's hanging out with the hippies, so he's learning from them the music and stuff.
So what did he do when he became an adult?
Um, he joined the Navy actually.
Okay.
Out of high school, he joined the Navy, and I've asked him about this, like, why would you do that, and like, like it's like the flow state. Like he just knew it would be the right thing to give him the experiences he needed to become who he needed to be. Like he followed his bliss. Again, he's in a constant flow state, like
Right.
since he's a kid. He never, so he's been
What did he
prompt.
do in the Navy?
He was, because of his his yogic abilities, and his ability to control physiological things in his body. He was put in like special operations and in submarines and stuff. And yeah, I've heard some stories, but I guess some
Wow.
of it's classified. He can't tell me everything, but
Wow. So is there anything else about he said he saw you and knew you'd be a student? Is there anything else, you could tell us before we move on about
yeah, I
him?
mean, yeah. So like I said, from the beginning, like we're like this again. I just said the day before, if I don't find my teacher, I'm going to kill myself. Now,
Right.
it took me about like 2 weeks to realize, like, I cannot believe like this is actually the guy I've been looking for. Like in the beginning, I'm like, this is cool. I'm doing yoga. Like this is what I wanted. 2 weeks into it, I mean, it was like one of the highest feelings I ever had. The fact that this is actually happening. Like I had just traveled the world looking for this, and now it's here. And I had no intention of staying in New York. I didn't know where I was going to go. I just knew I came back because my mom was selling the house. I was going to sort things out. But now I meet this teacher, and I said, "Okay, I'm sticking around. This is it. Like this is like what I've been looking for." So, but yeah, he told me like early on, like within maybe the second time I saw him, that I was going to play a key role in bringing these authentic teachings to the West and having an impact in scientific circles as well. Which again, this is 21 years ago, and I work with doctors and I work with them with a lot of things, but I still haven't even fully manifested what he had originally said. But at the time, I'm 25. My parents are selling that. Like my parents are divorcing. Like I didn't fit in. I did not see myself living up to what he was saying. And he said we would be connected basically for the rest of our lives. And
And,
and this
and
is
you
true.
still are?
Yeah, yeah. So 20, I talk to him all the time. I go see him. He's in North Carolina. I'll be seeing him this summer. But we have that
Wow.
connection.
Wow. So you show up at the park or at the forest,
Mhm.
and how's he teaching you? Like, is he got a book? Like how's he doing this?
Yeah, so for the first 3 months, we're twice a week, we're in the forest, and he was teaching me yoga, but different from what you'll see in a yoga studio. It's not like, okay, everybody do this, do this, do this. He's really he's really teaching me um, to meditate on the sensations going on inside my body. So, in other words, every time we would do something, the intention was never to force yourself into a pose. It was always more important to feel what's going on while you're in the pose. And then when you get out of the pose, take a moment to feel what that just did to you. So, it's this process it's called interoception by modern scientists, of paying attention to the feelings inside of you. There's, like the pulsations and the blood flow, like all of those things draw you in. And, you know, I like to describe it as, yoga has many meanings. One of them means union. And you could say it's the union of the conscious and the unconscious. You could say it's like flow state. And it really is. Yeah. So you're really trying to like basically again get into that flow state, so you can do it. So there's different ways that it's taught. Like very textbook definition, like description is like you can sit under a tree or something, and you can focus on just your breath, or you could focus on an external object or an internal object, and you're just practicing single pointed focusing your mind. And if you do this, what will happen is your breath will start to slow down, and then you'll notice your physiology will slow down, your heart rate, your blood pressure will slow down. So that's one way to do it, to start with the mind, and then the mind will affect the breath, and then the breath will affect the body. Then another approach, which is popular, is to work directly with the breath. So by deliberately slowing down your breath, you you directly affect your mind as well. focus your mind. So you could slow down your mind to slow down your breath, or you could slow down your breath to slow down your mind.
And
Which is
which one did he teach you, both? Or
he taught me yeah, all of them, but really
oh,
it's the third one where you're doing breathing and also that paying attention to what's going on inside your body. That's the quickest method. So instead of paying attention to like an external object, or trying to just sit there, a lot of people say just sit there and meditate. I meditate every day. If you're doing the techniques that he taught me while you're meditating, you'll get there much quicker because you're using the pleasant feelings in your body. In other words, like, yeah, just paying attention to what's going on in your body is just a quicker method to get in touch with, to slow the mind down. Because if you think of the mind like a movie, like the old movies, like you would have frames, and the frames would go so quickly that it would just seem like a seamless movie. So this process is to slow down the flow of the thoughts. So then you could see like the space in between your thoughts. It's like thought,
nice,
thought, thought.
nice.
So by manipulating the body, paying attention to the body, you bring about that slowness of thought. And then that leads to something else that happens. So for 3 months, it was very hands-on, like lists of instructions to do. And then he told me early on also that like within a few months, I would have a definitive experience that would forever change the way I see the world and the way I interact with the world. And sure enough, after about 3 months, I did have this experience, which it almost felt like you're in like a first person perspective. You're in like the first person of a game, like you're interacting with other people. But then at this point, after I had this experience, I was able to almost like while I'm talking to someone, be aware of my own thoughts at the same time.
Wow.
And also at that point, after the 3 months, I was able to just sit down to meditate, and within minutes, now within seconds, just get myself into the meditative state, just like clicking, like shifting gears in a car. It's just like it happens very quickly. And also like other things, like my memory increased. I could read a book and just remember everything in one shot.
Yeah, that's really interesting because our brains move so fast
Mhm.
that when people get in trouble and they describe their thought process, it's this happened and I did this. And it's not two steps.
Hmm.
There are all these steps of you're assessing something, you're assessing how you feel about it, you're assessing your history, you're assessing your goals. And it sounds like what Jim did was help you. I love the analogy with the film is he helped you slow down that film till you can see it frame by frame. Because I've never had that analogy when I go to help people, but I'm gonna start using that now, is people do see the situation as just two steps, and there's 48, 72 frames that actually happen. And I tell people, I try to get people to slow down their thoughts, not by frames. So that's amazing. Like what you were able to accomplish with him is kind of the ultimate in consciousness and being conscious of what's literally happening every moment.
Absolutely. And another technique he taught me, which, again, I think you'll love this. This is like all about becoming more conscious, is, at the end of the day, to sit and look back on your day, rewind your day. And I find it more effective to start from the present and rewind it backwards. So if you did all these things and then you're at the end of your day, you're sitting to reflect, you don't start at the morning. You start at the end of your day and you work backwards. Oh, I spoke to this person. Oh, I was doing this. And you just look at ways you could have done things more mindfully, more skillfully. So now you're bringing in this self-reflection. And Jim has always been about karma. He's always been about karma. Like he lives it. So, it's like uh, it was never with him. It was never like some of these gurus like, oh, you do this and you'll have power. No, it was always about being a better person, just like what you teach. It's like be humble. It's everything is karma. So if you want good, if you want to have happiness, you have to help others have happiness. So and that's becomes more and more and more and more of a subtle practice because you can keep as you look back on your day, and I do this in the morning a lot. It's like, it doesn't have to be at night, but the more you could look back and keep seeing like, yeah, this person was rude to me, but what could I have done differently? And in our textbooks, we have like lists of all the harmful actions, helpful actions. So you don't have to even figure it out. The Buddha, these masters have laid out these beautiful ethical teachings, Christianity too, but you just keep refining and refining. And in the process, some people are like, well, that person was rude to me. Why should I be nice to them? But the benefit is you become more conscious, which as you know, is an essential step to live in flow, to live in bliss.
Yeah, wow. There's so many things I want to talk about here.
I
I'll wait to another time, but I just want to mention a couple things because I think what Jim did is brilliant. One is we live our life cause to effect. Cause and an effect happens, and that becomes a cause and an effect happens. We
Right.
live a cause effect. And you're right, most people are so used to living their life cause to effect, they assess their day cause to effect. How did it start off and go forward? It's really healthy to flip your thought process. So if you look at it, he would affect the cause, which I think
Mm.
is super healthy for your brain to sit down and go, what happened before this moment? What happened before this? And it really fixes the brain that way to go backwards. So I think that's absolutely amazing. And then the other thing is that I think the more that you become aware of your, like you said, these other options and what you could have done, the only way you're going to see it is to go backwards.
Hmm.
And there's a trick. The most efficient way to get something done is to start from that end.
Exactly.
And kids know this when they go to a restaurant, and there's the maze, on the the menu, the kids menu. The kid who finishes it quickest starts from the end and works backwards. And
Exactly.
so I think that's amazing. Start from the end of the day, you work backwards. You're going to make it through your day quicker. You're going to see all the right answers
Hmm.
a lot quicker. So that's just genius. So you refer to him as a guru. Is Jim your guru?
Well, I always refer to him as my teacher, but that's what guru means. Guru means, I mean, it has many meanings. Like Sanskrit is such a poetic language. Like gu could mean darkness and ru can mean light. So bringing you from the darkness of ignorance to the light of wisdom and awareness. Or guru means heavy, meaning heavy with qualities. In Tibetan, the word guru is translated into lama. So you've heard like the Dalai Lama. He's like the ocean like guru. But it means teacher, but it has a different, it's not like your kindergarten teacher. Although they say, anyone who's taught you anything is your guru. If so,
Oh,
whoever taught you how to read, write your first letter is your guru. But there's many different gurus, and I have many teachers of all different types. But you could say that we all have like, if you think of like a soulmate, we have a guru, like a teacher who is going to be the one who unlocks your potential. And to me, I see like him as the connection to like you could say like it's what we're looking for is inside of us, right? We call it the Buddha nature, but it's just a flow state, it's a state we're looking for. So he's always like closer to that state. So he's a living embodiment of it. But uniquely, this is where like the whole karma and the perfect synchronicity comes in, like perfectly suited. Like he grew up where I grew up. Like we grew up in the Staten Island of all places, you know? And so we understand the same metaphors, and so it's been very interesting. But like I said, this is what I wanted to say earlier too. After the 3 months, after I had that experience, the next 20 plus years has been mostly hands off, mostly just maintaining that state, and me then going on to find many other teachers, like my Tibetan monk Geshe-la.
Yeah, we'll talk about next
Yeah.
week.
So
Yeah.
I've met many teachers. So it was like really hands on for the first 3 months. But then after that, like a true great teacher, not wanting me to be too dependent on him. You know, like a bad teacher, a bad guru wants you to be dependent on them.
Right.
So he was from after 3 months, he's like, I would ask him things. He's kind of like, you're going to have to figure that out on your own. He
So guru, I like what you said, is a teacher, anybody who taught you to read,
Mhm.
technically be a guru. But I think in Eastern culture, they use that word guru a lot, and it has a certain, you know, quality or, you know, aura around it.
Yeah, I would say that, when you watch Western stories, like these great stories, movies, really the major theme is like the guy saves the princess and marries her. Like, so it's like this male female, the animus, kind of like the merging of like the male and the female archetypes is like the culmination. Whereas in the East, even to this day, I watch like Bollywood movies, like a great story in the East is like the man maybe is already married and has kids, but the pinnacle is like when he finds this, he goes off, like something tragic happens to him, and he's searching for deeper meaning, and goes off and finds a guru. And so that's so like the guru is like the guru student relationship is a major motif in the Eastern. So I like, being a Westerner who's been very involved in Eastern, like I like the idea of bringing both archetypes, both concepts, the marriage and the guru and the student.
Right. The thing is, though, is in the Western type, the marriage is kind of, and they lived happily ever after.
Right.
It's kind of the end. Whereas what you just said in the Eastern, a guy could be married,
Mm-hmm.
and there's still this. To me, it almost sounds like the Eastern perspective is much higher and greater and continual than the Western
I
perspective.
would say the I would say the East has a lot to benefit from the West because, like you talk about in your book about like, God's plan and marriage. I think that's really missing those teachers. They're there in the East. Just like we have disciples and mentorship, Plato and Socrates, we have that in the West. But yeah, no, there's to me, I'm always a synthesizer, right? Like there's the East, there's the West. What happens if you take the best of both?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it sounds like you were looking for a yoga master, really a spiritual master. And this this didn't sound like yoga to me. Like everything you described doesn't sound like yoga, at least what I thought yoga was. So what's the deal here? Like do you get that a lot, people confusing what you were
Oh yeah.
doing yoga versus what they think when you say yoga?
Yeah, yeah. So yoga has become synonymous with stretching, which is there's 8 limbs to traditional yoga, and the third limb happens to be asana, which doesn't even mean stretching, it means posture. So sitting, you see the Buddha sitting cross-legged, straight, like that's called an asana. So, but yeah, so asana practice is stretching. And then before that is the ethical. So 1 and 2 is ethical training, like the do's and the do nots, almost like the 10 Commandments. Then you have the stretching. Number 4 is the breath control. Number 5 is sensory control, mastering the 5 senses. And then 6, 7 is like meditation and sustained meditation. And then the 8th is the goal, is samadhi, which is synonymous with yoga, which means absorption. And again, it's like the merging of the unconscious and the conscious.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so, so in Buddhism, though, that's not the end. That's the beginning. You have to, when you achieve that state, now you can use that mind, like, because again, going back to that frames, right? The frames of the movie, if your mind is going like this and you're in that first person perspective, you really have very little control because you're
Right.
being like you're in reaction mode all the
Right.
time. Whereas if you're able to slow it down and you're reflecting back every day, you're creating these spaces where you're allowed to say, I'm going to choose to do something different. I'm going to choose. Have you heard of that guy, Viktor Frankl?
Yep.
Man's Search for Meaning has that famous quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is freedom. And that's kind of the concept is once you have that freedom, now I have like we call it like the leisure or the suppleness of being able to take my mind and direct it as opposed to like thought comes up, now I have to react to this thought. Now I could say, well, what do I want to think about? What do I want to contemplate? What do I want to penetrate and deeply understand?
Wow. I,
That's the real
yeah,
meaning
I
of
will.
yoga. That's the meaning.
Yeah.
That's the meaning of yoga is when you're able to bring your mind to that place where now you can direct it. And that allows you to do physical feats as well. I mean, when we get into like the yoga people, and I'm not going to talk about like Jim's abilities and things I've seen, but just to start with, slowing your heart rate down to almost nothing, being able to, like when we get sick, when we get a fever, the fever is our own bodies raising its temperature to boil out the toxins, right? Which means that on some level, we can raise our temperature. We have a thermostat. So you could actually watch this on YouTube now, where you take wet towels and you wrap them around you in the freezing cold, and you'll, through this control of your body, dry the towels,
Yeah.
completely dry the towels. So I mean, then you get into like walking through solid matter when you get to that, when you get to certain points. Like so all these things are documented. There's a lot of frauds. There's, I would say just like anything else, like 90% of people claiming to be gurus are tricksters, and they've gotten caught. They're like magicians who do different things. And again, in that Eastern culture, you could almost say it's like a weakness, right? Like in the West, people are so looking for their soulmate that they wind up doing all types of destructive things and they get misled and manipulated. Same thing in the East. It's like here we have these cults and these like, churches that mislead people. It's way worse over there. I mean, followers of like millions and tens of millions of people following this person who it comes out was like doing horrible things and lying.
Right. Right. Well, I love the explanation about yoga being these 8 limbs. It's
Mm-hmm.
much bigger and deeper than what people realize. I'm a competitive person,
Mm-hmm.
and if I wanted to get good at yoga,
Mm-hmm.
and you were my coach, what would you like? What would you have me focus on so I get good at yoga?
Good question. I mean, honestly, I like to start with schedule 5 minutes a day, this is crazy nowadays, with no phone, just like no phone, no distractions, just you can sit down or you can lay down for 5 minutes and do nothing but sit with yourself.
Okay.
And just no judgments, nothing to achieve. There's no goal. You're not trying to do some breath. You're not trying to meditate. You're just literally sitting there with whatever arises. Whatever arises, you just say, I'm thinking about this. Oh, I just heard this. You kind of labeling what you're what's coming up without
Okay.
attaching to it. That to me is the real best place to start. And then you could start counting, like, one of the first things Jim taught me actually was to count. That's one of the best things to do because again, counting is conscious and breath. So like you count to like, inhale, count to 9, Like you're not trying to hold your breath. You're just literally focusing on the counting.
Perfect. And
That's,
then, so that's you're becoming aware
mhm.
that there's a film, if you will.
Yeah.
And then meditation is the actually the slowing down of that film.
Yeah, well, not you're not deliberately trying to slow it down. Like
Right,
all of these techniques naturally slow it down.
right.
But I would say if you want to go one step further, as opposed to just laying down, like let's say you're laying down, inhaling deep into your belly. We
Okay.
breathe from up here a lot. So breathing into your belly is called like diaphragmatic breathing is very important. But if you can just lay down on your back and breathe into your belly, and then just again, if you force it, it's like anything. If you force it too much, it's going to take you out. So just very gently and deliberately slowing your breath down, like an inhale, hold it for a couple of seconds, and then exhale. So that, like I use the metaphor of shifting gears. It literally is like that. And the way to shift the gears, like the gear shift, is your breath. So if you can slow your breath down, the movie frames will slow down. They're hand in hand. And likewise, if you get anxiety, what happens? Your breath gets faster.
Yeah.
So it goes hand in hand. It's like two gears.
So how would you help me be good at meditation?
I would first, I would first help you get like consistency is key, right? So rather than like, I'm going to do like intensive yoga and like this, if you can stick to that 5 minutes a day and just
Okay.
do that every single day, like you're doing that for the rest of your life. And then that 5 minutes can become 10 minutes. And then it could become 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. And then, but then, yeah, then I would, if you were interested, I would show some gentle stretching and paying attention to the body. So yeah, that's so I would work differently with different people depending on their age and their flexibility and everything. But yes, definitely like the most important thing is like you got to clear time. If you're like wake up till until you go to sleep, you're like nonstop go, you need to create that 5 minutes. But then if someone was like, I really want to get good at this, like I was when I met Jim, I had literally nothing going for me. Like I was 100% in. So I was able to do a daily, 45 minutes of stretching, breathing, and then on like full and new moons, that's when Jim would give me like a little bit more involved, like breathing, like so for example, like breathing like seven breaths in, 7 breaths out. Like that was one of the things that he taught me. Like so techniques like that.
Wow. So you had nothing going on when you met Jim.
Yeah.
And did you get a job eventually? I mean, you decided you were going to stay there,
Yes.
right? Your parents got divorced. Now you're staying essentially for Jim. So what were you doing also besides meeting with Jim?
So this is like again, this is after traveling like 5 months in the Middle East, coming back, then going to South America for 9 months. So I just got back. I maybe met Jim like 2 months after I got back. So yeah, now I'm gonna stick around. And my mom did sell the house, so I had to get my own place. And I just said like I just want to dedicate myself to this. So I had worked earlier in a research,
Okay.
I'd mentioned a research lab. So I was able to get a few hours there a week and waitering. I got a waitering job, which was interesting. It was good meditation practice. It's an intense job. So I was just doing that basically to sustain myself. And then, as I got a little bit more involved, like maybe like a year into it, I started teaching. Jim's like, now you have to teach, basically.
Oh, Jim said for you to teach?
Yeah. He's
The
like,
best way to learn something is to teach it. Oh, I have never
yeah,
met Jim. I already like Jim.
you
He's
have
killing
very,
it.
you have very similar, you and him are very similar. Another thing that you both do, I forgot to say this very early on. Keep in mind, my mom's selling the house. She's emotional. She's angry at my father, at my sister, at me, and she's taking it out on me. And there's a lot of tension. And I remember Jim telling me to do something that you recommend, which is rehearse.
Yeah.
So rehearse. You're going to see your mom. She's going to do this. So practice in your mind her doing this and you responding a different way. So,
Wow.
so yeah, you guys have a lot in common.
So who are you teaching yoga
So,
to?
So first, I was I was tracked. I was, I had old friends, and I had left Japan for 2 years, but now I'm back in Staten Island. So I was reconnecting with some old friends, new friends, and we were getting together in the park. And people knew what I was doing. They had heard. I was telling
Wow.
everybody about gym, like, oh, I have this yoga mat. Everybody, so some of my friends were getting interested. So I was teaching a few people, and some of them met Jim, and then they became students of Jim for a while. But then Jim, Jim would plant. He plants like little seeds. One of the seeds he planted was like he taught seniors that you could teach senior citizens. So yeah, one thing and another, I wound up going to the senior center and getting a job teaching, like 80, 90-year-old, mostly women, chair yoga. So that's the thing. Even if you can't do like people, again, this idea of yoga, I got some great results because a lot of the stuff you can do it right from a chair. You could stretch gently, but it's all meditation is all the mind. Yoga is really all about the mind. The body, again, is a way to facilitate that, and the breath. So everything they could do sitting down. So I started with one class and they loved it, and I really loved it too. And then that turned into two classes, and then I just got a bunch of senior centers that I was teaching at.
Really?
Yeah.
You did all the teaching?
I did it for a while, and then I had friends who I was teaching. I taught them how to do it. And then I went to India, which we'll talk about next time. But while I was in India, I delegated the work to friends of mine. So I
So
was,
entrepreneur,
yeah,
you're building a group.
yeah. I
Oh,
wasn't a
that's
good entrepreneur because I wasn't making a good percentage, but I was at least, yeah, I was running it for a little while.
but building an organization. So you mentioned that, next time we'll talk about India, but I we talked about the Wheel of Bliss.
Hmm.
And we talked about how um, the fire is the spiritual, and Jim is your spiritual master. And I know that all of the Wheel of Bliss applies to your interaction with Jim, but I just wanted to put the Wheel of Bliss to test in one area.
Okay.
So I wanted to look under the fire area, under the Wheel of Bliss,
Hmm.
and ask you these three questions about Jim.
Yeah.
So, number one, what did you get from Jim?
Right, right. Okay. So yeah, so the Wheel of Bliss is about each of the elements giving and receiving of these different energies.
Yeah. So what did you
So
receive? There you go.
so yeah, from Jim, I would say, yeah, the spiritual or the energetic is like the nonverbal communication. So you can read, I've read a lot of books, I have a lot of great teachers, but the things that Jim was able to teach me through metaphor, through breathing, through these techniques were to, unlock my own spiritual power, you know? And the fire is about confidence, confidence in basic goodness, and confidence, like he always uses the term self-regulating. I remember that was one of the words he used. That's a funny thing about Jim too, is like when you're at a certain phase, he'll be a certain way. When you're in a different phase, he'll be a completely different person. It's like we use the term emptiness. Like there's no Jim. He just is able to create circumstances. Like he doesn't identify with his body or his personality. Like he uses it as a prop, as a tool, because we need it. The student needs it. But so yeah, I would say that he gave me the confidence that of karma and like these deeper spiritual principles, how energy really works.
Wow. That's amazing. So what did you give to him?
Well, yeah, it's like we mentioned, like the soulmates, like these two souls are like looking for each other, and then if they can't find each other, you feel like something's missing. It's like there's a saying in the East, kind of like that: a teacher not finding their student is like incredibly disappointing. It's like a very so it's like if you're a great teacher, like the greatest bliss you can have is to find your student to pass it on to. So I would say I became a vessel, you know, a worthy vessel. But yeah, yeah, and he, you know, as you know, you learn more from teaching, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
so he told me that also early on. He's like, when you're a good teacher, you'll always be learning more than your student.
Right. Absolutely. And so the third part, community. How does that relate to Jim?
Yeah, well, I would say, you know, we have like because the in the third part of the wheel of bliss is the relationship. So if we're talking on the fire level, this energetic level, it's like, yeah, it's been like 21 years. It's like the longest kind of continuous relationship I've had in a way, fellowship. And so yeah, just like the giving and receiving, the, you know, like he's never asked me like pay me for anything, you know. So it's up to me to think about the offerings. And but then again, you know, he has everything he needs, so there's really nothing he needs from me. So um it's more just going through the motions of it, and this, it's very symbolic. Everything is very symbolic. And you know, so okay, I'll tell you one other thing. There's a saying, there's three ways you can repay your teacher's kindness: physical, verbal, and mental. Physically is to give money or food, you know, just things he can use. So I'm always thinking about things that I can get for him, like to help him with. And it's usually very little things, like he doesn't ask for much. And then uh verbal is to speak highly of him to others, you know, is you know, and I notice this a lot with people, like bad students, you could say, you know, like they have a hard time giving praise to their teacher, whereas I've been trained through this process to always be, because you know, a lot of people feel like if I say I learned this from this person, it's going to make me seem less amazing. But it's exactly the opposite, especially masculinity. If a
Right.
man can say, like, I learned this greatness because I have a great teacher, it actually makes you more masculine because it means that you're able to be receptive. You know, you're not
And you
like,
have discipline,
yes.
commitment. I mean, look at all the things that have to be, you have to do. Absolutely.
So yeah, so the third thing that you can give a teacher is to put their teachings into practice. So
Right.
I would say that's been really the core of our relationship, is like the happiest Jim can get is that I'm growing.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, where are we at in the story here? How many, we started at 2004. Where are we at?
So yeah, 3 years of like I said, like the first 3 months, and then there was like this maintenance, me teaching and him helping him teaching me how to teach. And but at some point during this, while this was going on, he was introducing me to many Tibetan Buddhist books and not so much, but like I was very into the Vedic stuff, like what we call Hinduism, and also the Tibetan Buddhism. So he was never like married to, like, he's like, this is what he's never into one thing. He kind of matches his students where they're at. But there was this Tibetan museum in Staten Island, and I'm in New York City, so I'm meeting some very high Buddhist lamas, Tibetan monks. So I'm studying with many monks throughout these 3 years, going into Manhattan, meeting different ones. And I met one monk who I instantly knew when I saw him would also be a teacher of mine. And he invited me to India to go study with him. And that's a whole nother, whole nother story.
Well, is that what we're going to talk about next time?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Can't wait to meet next time, man. Thank you so much. This was
Awesome.
exciting.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been wanting to tell this story for a long, long time. So thank you
Yeah,
so
Jim sounds amazing. I hope to meet him someday.
You will, definitely.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks.
John.